All right, so today we're going to continue on our GIF animation demos. This right here, which is just this very simple graphic on our Canvas page to illustrate our assignment sheets, that is just a simple GIF animation. The background is one image, and then the assets are just the different levels of glow that are given to this object in her hands. So in order to do this project correctly, we need to have an assets file and a stage file where our finished panels go. So I'm going to open those two up in Photoshop. I like to have my sketches just open as well, my storyboard, because the reason a storyboard is important is it keeps you on task. It's easy to get distracted and move your character too much and forget that in the beginning you wanted to accomplish certain things, and then in the middle you wanted to accomplish certain things, and in the end you not wanted to accomplish certain things. So I'm going to keep that in the background just to keep me mindful. And now I have my assets here where I labeled each kind of different one so I can build different birds and bring those over. And I have my stage. Okay, so everything is working out so far. And now I need to start the second stage of my movement. But first I want to see kind of how we've done so far. So let me turn all of these off. Which one is still on? There it is. All right. So we have this, it goes to 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 this. So we have our camera move taken care of, which is just kind of an introduction. That's the first part of this. And that's what I chose to do instead of having my bird kind of fly in. Instead, we're just going to pan over to it. And then we have all of our different birds. But let me see. I flattened those into these different layers. So this one I want to put together with 7. Like that. And then for 8, think of this as puppet theater. I want to put that one together with 8. So as the camera moves, the bird also moves with it until it settles into position. And then with 9, I want to put in that asset layer. And then he just kind of stays in place. And then it goes to this, to this, to this, to this, to this, to this, and you see he's moving the whole time. Now, I can run a test on this to see how we're doing so far, but it's a little complicated because I have all of these different layers that I built my creatures with. But I'm going to go ahead and turn those, or erase all of those now from my stage, not from my assets. That's why you keep them separate. So I'll delete all of those, and I just keep the layers I need to use. Right? And then I have some additional ones I might be using later. And I have this black border box around everything. So let's go to timeline, and I'm in the storyboard view because we're keeping it very simple and frame by frame for the moment. And then I'm going to say make frames from layers just to test it. I'm going to delete the layers I don't need. So I don't need the one at the end, and I don't need the ones at the beginning. All right, so what you see is because I have a separate animated background from an animated creature, I now need to put these together. And so this is what's interesting, is I'm going to put this one, the with 7 layer, with this layer. So the way I do that is I click on 7 and I click with 7. So that those two are linked together. Remember, all the timeline does is program the little eyeballs here. And then I no longer need this panel. 8, I put with 8. And then I no longer need this panel, which is just the creature on its own. 9, I put with 9. and so on and so on. Then I no longer need this panel. And now I need to put the backgrounds with all of my creature animation. And because it's all the same background layer behind all of these, it's all the 9 background layer, I'm just going to turn that on, select them all, and say for all of those, turn that layer on. Okay. And then it gets darker and darker. So I'm going to take different creatures maybe. And as it starts to get darker, I'm going to put, ooh, I need to move this layer down actually. Let's move these beneath my character. Well, I'll do that later. So let's not worry about these yet, because this is the next, the middle of the section where I start to really have the weather change. So far, this is what I've animated. Now I can set a default timing on all of them. It's going to go kind of fast. And I like to do 0.3, about 1/3 of a second. Loop it through forever and just play it and see how it works. So the panning works, the bird is there, and then the bird starts moving in place, kind of shuffling around. Now here's the cool thing. I'm just testing it right now. But I can later play with those different frames and really move that bird in lots of different ways just by duplicating the frame like that and then moving it to a different place. Because all of these are different movements. And kind of change up the dance and extend that movement as much as I want. You see this little extra movement at the end there? I can just keep that going. I can play it backwards and forwards. I can duplicate all of these movement layers. You know, starting at 9. So I have 10 different movement layers here now. And I can duplicate them all by looking at the window options and say copy frames. And then I can say paste frames. And I can say after the selection. And then I can even reverse their order. So they'll play forwards and backwards now. So I really extended that little dance now from frame 9 on. So the bird's blinking, he's opening his mouth, he's flapping his wings, so on and so on. All right. Now the only problem is when you do that and you reverse, you duplicate and then you reverse, you'll get 2 duplicate layers, right? This was the last one and then it starts the first. So I'm going to delete that one. And that's just to kind of show you some of the games we can play once we have all our assets and backgrounds in place. Right. In the same way, I can also reverse. So if this was my whole animation, I could go up to panel 9, select all of those, copy them, and you only want to copy them through the window options on timeline here. Then paste them. Say OK, and then move them all to the very end. And then reverse them. And then it will pan out. And now it will loop continuously. So he dances around. And now the camera will start to pan out. And voila, you have a perfect loop. Now the problem with this is a perfectly fine GIF animation. It's got plenty of layers, but it only tells the first 3 images of my storyboard, and there's no transformation. You know, this is just what you call a movement test. And I have a camera move test and a character movement test. And those are all the character assets I'm going to build. But now in the next stage, or at least with that character, but I can keep animating him in that dance as long as I want. Now I need to build up assets for the background, and then eventually for the T-Rex. So before I can do that, I need to erase all of these timeline frames just by selecting them all and dragging them down to the trash. And then I'm going to close timeline. And now I'm going to save it. Now the reason for all of that is now when I do different things with different assets, I don't want to mess up the frames I already created. And I only want to output my final frames when I'm all done with all the assets. So now I'm going to deal with building background assets. So I'm going to go to my documents. And I have this background assets file. Where I've started to make it a lot darker and moodier. And so this is the last frame. Now, if you're smart about it, you can build all of that in just within your stage. And some students choose to do that instead of always moving them back and forth. My only issue with that is that eventually you have to erase them in order to output your frames. But with the background here, because I go darker and darker and darker, and as long as I don't have my timeline showing, I can build and then flatten those assets as long as I'm very mindful of what I'm doing. So what I'm going to do now is build in some background assets right to here. But first I want to move these behind all my characters, because my character is always going to be in front of these things. Unless I want to get fancy, do texture fills or something on top. Okay, so now I'm going to change the color here, and I'm going to start making them blue, because now the sky is starting to change. So I started with simply duplicating layer 9 and just making it a little bit darker in levels. So it looks like a storm is starting to come. With layer 11 copy 3 here, I'm going to composite in some other things as well. So I can actually go back to, let's see, my first assignment. Oh, and I had already flattened it though, right? Let's see. I think that was my mistake. So I wasn't able to pull all my different texture fill assets. So I had made the mistake of already flattening it. Oh no, good. I've got most of these, yeah. So I'm going to take this layer of texture fill. And I have all this sky. I'm going to use that too. So these are assets I like. I'm going to modify this asset a little bit. And just roughly cut it out. So I can make that sky kind of moving in the background. And then these are just different texture fills that I can build on top of it. Bless you, bless you. All right, so I'm going to take all of these. Soften this one a little. And I'm going to move those onto my stage. Because now you kind of see how everything works. You set up your little toy shop on one side with your puppets and their props, and then you arrange them all on your stage for your final animation frames. Okay, I'm going to take all of these layers over. So, easiest way to do that is to select them all. Hold down Command, wherever there's an eyeball showing, I'm going to click. So I have multiple layers selected. I swoop that out, and then I'm going to drag those layers onto my stage and move them up to the very, actually exactly where they were, right on top of all my backgrounds. All right, now I do have to position them. These are a little different, right? I want to kind of be able to scroll those clouds. And so that's what I'll do in the next demo, is be able to roll those storm clouds in. now I'm saving my stage.